Shaundel, can you see my screen? I can't see anyone else.
Yes.
All right. So thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And welcome everyone for welcome to being here with us today. My name again is Jazzma Holland, she, her pronouns. And like Wendy said, this is Shaundel Spivey. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Shaundel.
Yes, Shaundel Spivey, he, him pronouns.
Yes, and we both serve with the lacrosse organization, Black Leaders Acquiring Collective Knowledge. And so today, like was stated, our topic is grassrooting in predominantly white communities. And so get ready, everyone. If you haven't had your coffee, hopefully this presentation will energize you enough. We will be definitely having this a little bit of interactive for you all. And so again, get ready to, talk, share your thoughts, and then after, get ready to do some work. So let's get this going.
Yeah, so we thought about this long and hard and realized that we had to interrupt this. So I know that you all have come to hear about grassrooting, but we want to cause a little interruption in the beginning. So over the last several years, you've seen a lot of protests and you've seen a lot of conversations around Black Lives Matter. And it seems like that conversation is kind of fading away. And oftentimes what happens is social justice issues become fads. And then they fade away and we start ignoring the conversation. So we want to bring that conversation to you again and just make sure that you remember about Black Lives Mattering. And here's how we want to do it.
To our ancestors, to those taken too soon from us, I thank you for this opportunity to honor your life and the sacrifice that was forced from you. I honor Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown Jr., Sandra Bland, Eric Gardner, Natasha McKenna, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, Alton Sterling, Betty Jones, India Kager, Freddie Carlos Gray Jr., Jordan Davis, Dominique Fells, Raya Milton, Walter Lamar Scott, Antoine Rose II, Tatiana Coquise Jefferson, Michelle Cousseau, Elijah McClain, Daniel Prude, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd.
So let us take a moment and honor all of the lives that have been lost due to racism, systemic racism, and white supremacy. Ashe. It's really important for us to not lose sight of these conversations and this work. It's very easy, as I said earlier, for us to see this as a fad and kind of allow those conversations to disappear. But recall and remember that while you might be able to disappear this out of your life or, step away, many of us, Black people particularly, live with this. We live with this pain. We see it every day. We hear about it. Our families talk about it at the tables. It is a part of our being. And we always have to sit and wonder, am I next? Or who is next? Is it me? Is it my family? And I don't want those conversations to be lost. And more importantly, I don't want the work around policy changes, around all types of organizing to be lost. We have work to do to ensure that Black lives still matter and will always matter in this world.
Okay, so with that, we are going to have you all now go into breakout groups. And so once you are in there, we want you all to discuss these two questions. So how can we ensure that these conversations about Black lives, the mattering, are not just a fad, and how that, making sure that they don't disappear? And then also, what work have you seen in our community that centers and addresses Black lives? So with this, think about these two questions, discuss them. We'll give you all about 5 to 7 minutes, and go ahead and identify someone that is going to be your note taker. Also, that can potentially be your spokesperson, because we will discuss these once we are back. And definitely try to stay on task, because we only have 5 to 7 minutes. So with that, you all should be seeing shortly an invitation to join a breakout room.
Welcome back, though.
Yes, welcome back. So hopefully you all had some good conversations. So let's go right ahead and dive right in. Let's talk about the first question. How can we ensure that these conversations do not disappear? So let's hear from any group that wants to go ahead. We had 8 groups, so we're looking for at least 8 responses. Let's go group 1. Group 1.
All right, that's us.
Awesome.
I was designated note taker, but group, feel free to join in. We were really only able to address the first question. A few comments that were shared were about holding our organizations, our companies that we work for, doing the work to hold them accountable to make sure that the conversation doesn't fade out there. I think it's easy for our organizations to see that, jump onto the fads and show that they're paying attention when nationally it's in the news, and then easily let it go. And so us personally take responsibility to make sure that those conversations are being brought up and show that they're a priority of individuals working for those companies. Let's see, I just shared about how with holidays coming up, we're oftentimes getting together with family members from different backgrounds, different parts of the country, whatever the case may be there, and difficult conversations may be coming up with political values and beliefs. And so being able to find a way to call out and call in family members to engage in dialogue and do some of the work there that can be very personal with people that we're close to. Wendy had made a comment about making sure to share out the conversations that you have with friends or people of color who are friends who you maybe engage in, not to share other people's personal stories with a name, but there's a lot of learning that can happen, I think, in those building conversations. So to be able to share just examples of people being whole people, I guess. And so I'm not sure, probably not doing that justice, but I think also, and then Charles mentioned, the media often dehumanizes individuals and just usually uses a name when a person of color has passed, but really being able to represent the whole story of that person, sharing family and supporting that family and those people in a much more personal and meaningful way, kind of to see the whole picture of a person. Group, feel free to jump in if I missed something.
That was an excellent recap of everything we talked about. Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and hear from group 2.
Well, no one raised their hand to be the accountability person, but again, if the group would like to add anything after I'm finished, The first conversation was sharing how we could certainly keep having these types of trainings, these types of opportunities made available for our community to keep the ball educational piece, keep it. There's a place to keep educating. Another suggestion was to do big art where it can't be missed, so that it's another way of displaying something that can cause us to look at something in a different brain set. And then the third one was it's very important for us to be recording the history, as in we're recording today, so that we record the stories in a variety of different ways, so that those coming in and out of our town is continuously in a cycle of seeing, yes, things have been done. Yes, things have been addressed. The suggestion was, or the reminder was, that we have 3 universities that just it's a natural rotating door for not only students, but faculty and other businesses within La Crosse, that it's important to show the work is being done, and to continue the platform, and to the best way is to keep this recorded and available for not only us that are needing reminders, but those that can go back and review for the first time, perhaps. So group, what else? What did I forget?
I'll add one more. I think sometimes, we do, if we're part of a group and we're organizing something, and some other things may be going on in the community, and it ends up being the same time or during the same week, I think our community and our region benefits more if we promote all of the programs, as opposed to just the program or the activity that we may have an investment in because we're planning it or we're organizing it. And so what I'm saying is that people come into different things from different angles and for different reasons at different times, and they show up for all of those different things too. And the more opportunities and options that we give people in our area, I think long run is in the best interest of our community and our region.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. So we're actually going to do, we're going to skip around a little bit. So if I don't call your group, but that doesn't mean that the conversation stops there. So we're actually going to see if anyone was able to answer question 2. And so that was, what work have you seen in our community that centers and addresses Black lives? And so let's see if, how about group 6? Were you all able to get to that question?
Yes, we did talk about that.
Awesome.
Yeah, and people mentioned a number of initiatives that they felt were involved in that process, including the Good Fight and Hope Restores, and a new effort I hadn't heard about by the school district it sounded like taking the classroom into the community, some kind of mobile effort, and I wasn't familiar with that. So those were the 3 of the things, and then obviously these book reads and the upcoming conference and the continuing education efforts.
Awesome, thank you. And let's go with our last group, group 8. Were y'all able to get to question 2?
Yes, one of the points that was made is that to really support racially diverse led organizations and businesses, Specifically talked about the Hope Restores in the clothes closet they've set up, Black student leaders supporting the taco stands. But for any of those organizations like Black Leaders Acquiring Collective Knowledge, monetary support allows you to be led from within and to accomplish those things like getting a new building that are really important to the success of the organization.
Awesome. Thank you. Really great responses. Thank you all so much for engaging in that conversation. Don't worry, we still have some more for you all to talk about. And so we definitely want you all to carry out these conversations within the community. So like we were saying, you know, there's things that'll come up during, you know, the holidays, but don't wait till the holidays, you know, bring these conversations back to your families, back to your places of work. And then we'll also address some of those things that you all were kind of saying in your responses regarding what does that support look like, and what is the work that is currently being done in the community, and how collectively we can all play a role in that, and what does that look like? So I'll reshare my screen here. All right, so really quickly, go ahead in your chat and just let us know what you're hoping to kind of get out of today's conversation presentation. So Shaundel will be checking on that, and then hopefully we will be able to address any of those, the goals that you all have. So go ahead and pop those into the chat. And Shaundel, can you just read off some of the ones that may come up?
Gotcha.
Yeah, what are you all hoping to get out of today? We just want to kind of see what is the purpose for everyone being here?
Hoping to understand the question that is posed in the title and explore those responses.
Okay, awesome.
Hear firsthand what the needs and challenges of running an organization like Black and how we can walk alongside you, learn how to initiate conversations with people of color without saying or doing things that offend them, ideas as a nearly all white community, how to motivate the community.
Awesome. So keep those coming, because one thing is that if we're not able to address one of your goals here today, we're definitely going to try to address it in another way. But let's jump in, and like I said, keep putting those in there. Let's jump in and address that question about grassrooting.
Yes. So when we talk about grassrooting, it's really important just to kind of have a basic understanding of what grassrooting is. And really, I mean, we see it happen in this community often, right? You get some folks that see a problem or they see an initiative that they want to drive, and like-minded folks get together and they say, hey, we see this same issue, or hey, we see this same thing that we want to work on as well to enhance our community, or whatever that looks like. And they come together and they say, let's do it together. Let's do it collectively, and let's work to, be it change policy, be it control purse strings in a sense of being able to give to organizations and support organizations monetarily, whatever that looks like. So one of the examples, I mean, you have Blacks Waking Up White, right? Like that's a great example of a grassroots organization coming together and saying like, hey, we have this, we want to address the issue around whiteness and how can white folks show up around social justice and equity conversations. When we talk about Black, we talk about the fact that when we came together, our organization came together with the understanding that there were some things that we wanted to address in our community. So community-wide, right? Addressing issues around racism or anti-Blackness. But then more importantly, within our community, wanted to bring our community together, right? Bridge the gap across generations, socioeconomic status, so on and so forth, right? Being able to say like, hey, let's come together as a community and work together. Being able to address identity work, being and living in a predominantly white setting. And it's important to recognize that a lot of the work we were doing was like young Black professionals coming together and saying, hey, we've operated in this community. Some of us grew up in this community. Some of us were transplants, and we were just at the university, and we seen whiteness kind of in some ways make Black people feel either inadequate or inferior or dismissed. And we said collectively, we're going to come together as leaders and work towards ensuring that our youth feel supported and they understand who they are, so they don't go and experience what we experienced, to ensure that the community recognized that Black people were here, have been here, still is here, and doing work in this community. And so that's kind of like the cause when we talk about grassrooting that Black is under. And we have 7 pillars that we do it. Feel free to check out our website. I won't talk too much around Black. I just want you to get the understanding of how our organization and so many other organizations similar to us have developed this mission or this idea or wanting to solve this one problem. So similarly, you have folks that come together for a great cause. And then there's also, systems that are up against you in some ways. And so the way that I like to talk about this is that you have folks that come together to develop cause and to solve and create solutions for various causes. However, there's also something blocking that cause from moving forward as well. And we have to be willing to address that. And it comes from a historical perspective, but more importantly, it just is. And so you might have heard of the concept of the Great White Wall. And I'm gonna just say, you're probably gonna go looking for it, and what's gonna pop up is gonna be something about like this Great White Wall dive in the tropicals or something like that. And so understanding that this concept is something around lived experience. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means. So when we talk about the Great White Wall, Jazz and I'm not going to give out institutions. So from a previous institution, we talked about the Great White Wall as the student association, right? So the student association was predominantly white, well, all white. And they made all these big decisions around money, around policy, student body concerns, et cetera. And there was a group of people missing at the table. The group of people missing at the table were the racially diverse, or the diverse folks that are a part of this institution as well. And so when we talk about this Great White Wall, it's important to understand that nobody was at the table. And so folks from diverse and marginalized backgrounds fought so that they could be at the table. That might sound a little familiar when you think of civil rights era and all those different things, right? So they fought to be at this table so that they can be a part of the decision making. And obviously, predominantly white city, predominantly white institution, they say, okay, well, you fought, you get those, we grant you those seats. Well, here's the thing about the Great White Wall. The Great White Wall operates in 2 ways. It blocks you, right? So how can we prevent you from being on those seats, right? How can we, in some ways, ignore you consciously, unconsciously, intentional, unintentional? I don't know. It's just, it is what it is. So you have that concept. And then the other way is push out. So after those seats were given to those diverse organizations, there was always a fight to keep those seats. And so what I mean by that is, let's say somebody decided, you know what, y'all got 7 seats, we want to take it down to 3. And so that way of being able to push out those organizations, those diverse perspectives. So if we take this concept of the Great White Wall and we apply it to the greater lacrosse, the question is, when you look at the tables, the major tables, the money deciding tables, the policy deciding tables, who's missing and who's there? Oftentimes what we have seen is for white folks to be at that table. And racially diverse groups, or even some of our other diverse partners and sisters and brothers, are not invited to those tables. And if they are, they're also invited, for a little while, and then we push them aside or move them out or disengage with those conversations. So here's why this is important to understand. The table makes decisions for our community. And there's folks that are in this community that are not allowed to be at that table and in those seats. And we have to change the way in which we think about this great white wall. So we're talking about dismantling this wall. And we could give you all of the answers, right, on how to dismantle this wall. But I really think it's extremely important for you all as members in this community to be able to engage in conversation of what can you do and what can we do as a community to dismantle this wall. And let's also say the wall is definitely not a real wall. It is a social construct. It is something that has been learned over time. It is something that people do unconsciously until they are shaken up and disrupted. So, does that make sense? I don't want to, if I lost anybody, feel free to mention something in the chat so I can explain further. And then Jazz.
All right, I was gonna say, just let me know when to keep going. I can't see anybody. All right, so with that, we're gonna actually go ahead and break you all out again. This one may just be for a shorter period of time, so maybe about 3 to 5 minutes. But we want you all to address this question. So how can we make sure that the Great White Wall doesn't stop the work that is happening in our community? Okay, so think about it, and then come up with 1 or 2 points, and then we will reshare when we reconvene. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. All right, so let's talk about it. So what are some things that came up in you all's conversation? And I think the group that we didn't hear from in the first round may have been, let's go group 4. So how can we make sure that the Great White Wall doesn't stop the work that is happening in our community?
Oops. I think that might be my group. And so since no one else is speaking up, it must be. So in our group, we talked about, I think the biggest thing was how it can be difficult in the groups we're in to know how to involve and invite people to the table. So we discussed just like going to like Black and asking, do you have any recommendations on who might be interested in this subject and who would want to come and do this work? Because we also want to be cognizant of asking people of color to do the work that we should be doing. And then we talked about showing up to school boards and, giving our voices to foundations like the La Crosse Community Foundation, and just getting voices, getting people to support the Black organizations. Does anyone else have anything on my group?
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. Let's go group 5. Anyone from group 5? I should have said for you all to have a recorder again. Have someone writing this down. Let's go group 7.
I don't know what group I was in.
Oh, that's okay. And we can definitely, if anyone just feels inclined, go ahead and just, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it. So if anything, even if there's a group that I didn't call or you want to say something, go ahead and let's hear it.
Okay. Well, I don't know what group I was in either, Jazz, but this is Barbara Martin Stanley. And something's wrong with our camera. So that's not just us not wanting y'all to see us. But anyway, one of the things that was talked about was research. Groups that are at the table, taking the time to really research who needs to be at the table that is a person of color. I talked about the fact that my husband and I are the only African Americans at our church. And sometimes, because of that, it's kind of like, okay, well, we don't have any other African Americans at our church, so all we can do is ask Barbara or Charles. Well, sometimes as the people at the table, you have to research who is in the community that you can talk to, who, whatever table you're at, whether it's a business, whether it's a church, whether it's an organization. You can't just say at the table, well, that person is not a part of our group, or that's not a member of our church, so we can't ask them. Systemically, some of those policies may have to be changed. If you're really interested in trying to make sure there's inclusivity going on, you may have to step out beyond and go beyond those boundaries of whatever your policy is and change that policy so that you can bring other people in. Also, people talked about overtaxing, again, people like you and Shaundel, who have risen to a certain level of acceptance, by the white community. They trust your judgment that, there may be other people out there, and it sort of becomes incumbent upon them to not just say, well, Jazzma, who else do you know of? Or Shaundel, who else do you know of? You got to take that step and walk out there and do that.
And I'll just add to what we talked about. My comments or contributions to the conversation included, from my perspective, the need to better educate individuals about the existence of the white wall, because as Americans, we have been socialized into the belief system that we as individuals, we are in full control of our own destiny, that we make decisions, we have the ability to do X, Y, or Z. And so many people don't even recognize that there are structures that exist, there are ideological systems that influence individual behavior. And so I think that more work needs to be done to sort of educate people that such a wall exists, that there is this sort of relationship,
yeah, for sure,
and the system, if you will.
Yes, thank you all so much. That definitely came up even in Shaundel and my own kind of personal conversations. This work can become taxing, and so knowing that maybe there are individuals that you don't know outside of people in Black or some of like the other Black organizations and whatnot in town, but doing that research also plays a big role into the way that you all function and make change. And so just making letting you all know that there are other avenues, other resources that you all can access to also help make those changes are very important. So thank you all so much for that. Anyone else?
Shaundel, question.
I don't know if they can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
Hi.
Now your organization, Blacks, BLACKS, can one assume that you folks would be in contact with other Blacks that are ready and willing to run for these various and sundry boards, the school board, the city council, the county board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We whites wouldn't know where to begin, but you got maybe a good foundation with your Black BLACK organization.
Yep. So I think going to one of the points that were mentioned a little earlier too is the ownership being on those that are at the table to do the research, right? Yeah, you can come to Black and we can recommend some folks, but also one of the things that I challenge a lot of organizations and companies to do is you go out into the community, you go build those relationships with people, because just like we've done it, like we're doing the work too, right? So when we're saying like, hey, we're reaching out to the Black community, we're doing the very same thing that you all could be doing. Like we have to build those relationships. We have to build that trust with our community. And so I think it goes both ways, right? Of being able to do that research and also be able to do the outreach. And some of it, yeah, it can fall on us because people might trust us faster or a little bit more, whatever the case may be. But I don't think that the table can ignore the importance of them doing the work.
One of the, could I speak? Would it be okay? Margaret Larson.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. One of the reasons that the La Crosse County Board increased the pay for supervisors 2 years ago was in hopes that having $800 a month would be a message to people who generally wouldn't run for county board to realize that, oh, so now I could have some money to pay for childcare while I go to meetings, or take some time off work in order to go to meetings. And I don't know that that message is out there among groups, but it certainly could be useful, because in our group earlier, we talked about financial support for people who have lived experience to contribute to the board or to whatever group you're talking about. And actually, this La Crosse City Council pay for council members, I believe, is $800 or $900 a month. So I think it's important for that message to be out there as an incentive or a way to answer some questions about how they could do it. Thank you.
Yes, and I think that the other piece, and I kind of want to go back to the last comment too, just kind of about going out in the community, is that I think a lot of times it's a lot more comfortable for people, like Shaundel said, to go to the individuals in those communities that you all trust. Whether it's because you have seen the work that we've done, or you've heard us speak at different places, or we're more, I would say, well-known compared to another individual within the community. So definitely taking a look at those biases that sometimes come in, whether that is, well, maybe I don't want to go to the person that's constantly in my office, or the other person of color that may be working, in my office, or that, like, you constantly, kind of see, like, don't necessarily shy away from conversations and save those to when you have the opportunity to talk to individuals like Shaundel or myself, like, and that's your time to engage in those conversations there. And if you're not engaging, why is that so? And is it that some voices matter more than others? So definitely taking a look at the many opportunities that you all have to have these conversations, because sometimes, a lot of times, you don't have to wait to make change, when a lot of times those doors are opening right in front of you. So.
And one of the things that I would throw in there, so specifically when we talk about the governmental entities, is, yes, I seen when the county board did that. I like that, right? Like what they're doing in terms of increasing salary. But here's the thing. If people don't know how to run for county board or city council or school board, if folks don't have the financial backing to be able to do that, or know that that's even an option for them, or maybe it's folks who are like, you know what, I want to be a part of that. I aspire to get there, but they don't feel comfortable being at the table. They don't feel comfortable, and not necessarily being at the table, they don't feel comfortable even running, because they don't think that people are going to see them as an equal, right? So there's kind of work on both sides, right? It's almost like you want to dismantle, and this is the important part of dismantling the table. When you dismantle the table, you get to a place where the folks at the table have to recognize that, one, there's some education that has to happen around the table, right? There's some education around how do we not just go out and recruit diverse people and listen to diverse perspectives, but how do we literally become a table that welcomes, accepts all types of diversity at the table? And how do we ensure that folks know exactly what they're getting into when they get to the table? Or how are we changing the way the table looks, the conversations at the table, the settings at the table, to ensure that everybody still feels welcome and appreciated and valued and a part of the table? Those are the conversations that we don't necessarily have. And some of it is like, you know, if you look at government entities, it's like, we have our structure. This is what we do. This is how we do things. We're not changing it. This is what we've done for the last 10, 15, 20 years. Well, here's the thing. When you add diverse perspectives, the way you did things for the last 10, 15, 20 years does not work all the time. I'll say that. There's pieces you can save and pieces you have to get away from. So that's what I'll say for that piece.
Don't many of these organizations have, as part of their organization, diversity committees, quote unquote? And I think I've seen that term around here and there. And couldn't these so-called diversity committees put this on their agenda? Go out and get together with the Blacks and see what's going on.
I mean, they could, but here's the reality though. A lot of times we create diversity committees or equity committees, and we don't give them the teeth or the money that they need to actually be able to do the work that's needed in this community. And so we got to be honest about that too.
Yeah, it sounds good, but yeah.
Yes, thank you all so much for your questions. I mean, as you all see, there's still so much work to be done, and we hope that, you know, you all are, you know, resonating with some of this and kind of, you know, even seeing if it is prevalent in your own, you know, communities, place of work, you know, groups and whatnot. And again, there was a quote that was on there before. If you're not, what was it? Oh my gosh. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so a lot of times we want to make changes, you know, do the diversity work, but there's, you know, there's no research. There's no one there that represents that community. And so if we're not, especially if we're not doing that research or reaching out to our community members, then sometimes some of those efforts can just fall. Like you do stuff and you're like, why isn't it working? We're trying to be diverse. We're trying to, it's not that simple. So yes.
Can I toss one in there real quick, Jassy? Because the other thing about what Jazzma is saying is that those folks also have to inquire or question, why do you feel that perspective is needed? Is it the perspective because you feel like you can't, like, is it important? Hold on, let me say it. It's in my head and I'm gonna say it the way I wanna say it. I gotta remove my, like, I wanna be nice when I say stuff like this. Here's the thing. You have to question, why is that important, right? We know that it's important, but why is it important for the folks that are at the table to truly transform and bring people of color to the table? Oftentimes what happens is, for white folks, they say, well, we don't know anything about Black people, so let's go find a Black person and bring that one Black person to the table as if Black people are a monolith, and we're not, right? My perspective on some things is gonna be different from Jazzma's perspective. And so just getting that one diverse person to the table doesn't necessarily solve for what we're trying to do. When I talk about dismantling systems or dismantling the table, it's about bringing multiple diverse perspectives to the table. That might mean you might need 4 Black people or instead of 1, right? Like, what does that look like? And truly going and actively doing that research and making it happen, and not just a conversation.
Shaundel and Jazzma, would you like us now to open this up for questions to other guests?
We're actually going to, we have like really quick, we're going to run through the last few slides here.
Okay.
So take us a little bit of time, but then, yeah, then we're good for questions. Okay, thank you. So we won't, we were going to have this as a group conversation, but the last conversation was really well, but we want you all to definitely take this question home and again, engage in conversation with this one. So what are you doing to ensure that you are uplifting and centering the voices of marginalized and racially diverse people? And so our conversation definitely touched on that. And so if you think that you are, pull those, identify those. And again, why are you doing them? And you'll be surprised, the different mindsets and thought processes that people may have about this. Okay, so this is taken from our, the posting that you all have been seeing for the invitation for this event. This was taken from that. This is kind of like the exact wording. And so the purpose that we had for today is, it is imperative that communities understand the importance of coming together to address systematic racism and inequality. It is equally important for communities to understand that there is work for us to do together. And there's also work that needs to be done in our own salient communities. Organizing in communities where we have historically been left out of the conversation, left out of history, often ignored and seen as a problem is not easy. So therefore, it is imperative that white communities learn to break down white walls that hinder the success of racially diverse people and organizations. And so basically just kind of saying that we need to all join together in order to break down those walls that have been put in place for racially diverse communities. And kind of going back into our conversations is that knowing that if we look at the Black community here in La Crosse, it is continuously growing. And so we currently have resources put in place, but again, who are those really there to serve? Are they serving our communities? Why are they put in place? And knowing that it's not something where you can make a new policy and it's one and done. Like Shaundel said, things change over time. And we have to work collectively in order to make sure that we are doing justice to this work. And so with Black, we have our own initiatives, but what are you all's initiatives and how are you all going about making those things happen? Shaundel, did you want to add anything?
What I would add is oftentimes when we talk about this work, and this is where some people tend to get offended, when we talk about the work needing to be done collectively, but there's also that separate work that has to be done in our own communities. And folks are like, well, why do we need a Black organization? Or why do we need, so on and so forth? And the reality of it is similar to white folks needing to have an organization that talks about anti-racism, right? And addressing social justice and anti-white supremacy. There's some work that white folks need to do collectively together to ensure that they're contributing to a larger community. There's also work that we need to do around healing and undoing racial trauma within the Black community. And so on and so forth. And you can apply that to all the other communities, if you will. And I think we have to be more open to the concept and the idea that white folks won't always be a part of every conversation and white folks won't always be a part of all the programs, right? Because we are trying to do what we can do for our community too. And ultimately, everything that we're doing in our community is for the greater community as a whole. So we talk around this idea of grassroots in La Crosse and not being able to survive with just one community doing the work. And all of our communities and all of our groups, based on all of our identities, have something to contribute and have work to do. And we have to ensure that we're supporting each other in doing that work. But more importantly, we have to make sure that we're moving beyond just conversations and doing action.
Yes, so just kind of going back to the whole grassrooting and our snippet for today, I mean, just knowing that I'll speak for myself, being a Black woman in a new, predominantly white town, going through all those different experiences, has shaped me, but also like it hasn't been easy. It has not been an easy process. And I've been here, what, for now going on almost 11 years now. And so it's been an adjustment. And so being a part of Black has definitely been able to, you know, you kind of find like your sense of self, but then you also realize that we're in this because we need to help our community, but also realizing that in our conversation, we kind of identified that people sometimes do feel comfortable with, again, going to organizations such as Black to help address issues and whatnot. And so, like Shaundel said, it can't just be us. It has to be all of us. And we have to, you know, get out of our comfort zones, get out of our box, and be able to, you know, go into the communities that we don't always, you know, visit on a day-to-day basis. Talk to those people that you don't normally talk to. And it's not about, well, it's about gaining that trust, but it's not about putting on a show. I think a lot of times, sometimes people feel as though they need to present themselves in a certain way when people just want to talk to people. They just want to have real conversations and feel heard and validated. And I think once you take that approach, you will get a lot more, people will trust the White community a little bit more and be willing to, you know, take part in some of the initiatives that you all are working so hard to put forth.
And now we can go to questions.
Yes.
And
so,
I will say before you do that too, Wendy, is
I already did it.
Some folks came here, right, and they were expecting this methodical, like, we're gonna bring all this research and talk about all this stuff. But here's the reality though. Research didn't get us into this. So we need to be sure to have bold conversations to make sure that we get out of it.